RooCode got a massive upgrade. They're calling it Boomerang Tasks. So basically, what it allows you to do is orchestrate very complex jobs. So, in my experience with it so far, you would give it a list of things that need to be accomplished, or you could give it one big problem. But I found it works really good if you can say, hey, these are the 5 things I need done. So, something a little bit bigger, something meatier than a typical go change a button or change text somewhere. And it would actually break them down into subtasks, send it off into a brand new context window, complete that task, come back to the parent task, and continue on. What's incredible about this is that it allows you to control which models are responsible for which parts. And I could see modifying this greatly to also make a decision on what mode to go into. Like it could actually be a custom mode that you tailor to a very particular model to do a very particular job. So let me get into a little bit more details on this, but I think this is a massive change and actually could make it more likely that local models could be used even more efficiently. So now typically what you have when you set up RooCode, you have a code, architect, and debug. And if you're like me, you've probably set up your own modes. What Boomerang Tasks is, or Boomerang mode is, it's a brand new custom mode. Now, that doesn't mean it won't be built in the future. It might be, but the way you set up right now is relatively simple. And they describe that here on this page. So the way you set it up is you download this file and you add it to your Roo mode. So me, I already had one. You need to take the JSON from this particular file, put it directly into your Roo modes, your .roo modes file, and you're good to go. Now, if you don't have the particular Roo modes file, just rename it to that, stick it in the root of your directory, and you're good to go. I'll show you a demo of this working here in a second. But a few things that I want to kind of talk through is like why this is important. So traditionally, what you have is you basically have a question or you have a job that you're putting in, and it works sequentially like this. So it will do something like read file, and then it'll go to, edit the file. We'll do some work in between there. So basically, it's a series of chain of things that end up happening back to back to back. And this all happens in a single context window. Now, you end up paying a significant more amount of money as your context window increases. And the more of these events that get chained together that may be unrelated to one another, the more money you end up paying for an API cost. Now, what I love about the boomerang mode is it changes that and flips it on its head a bit. Because what you end up having is an orchestrator. So this orchestrator takes some sort of question or job that you're giving it and then breaks it up into multiple subjobs. So rather than having this chain of events that occur that build into a single context window, we end up with multiple context windows. So for example, this is a context window. So the orchestrator has its own, and then each job has its own context window. Now think about this just a little bit because while currently it's not any faster to develop, right? Because you're basically doing the same amount of work. You're just breaking up the work to be done in different pockets. What this allows you to do is save significant amount of money on cost, especially when you're paying a per token cost. But it also gives some really good results because what you can do, and what I found it to do, is this will generate a really good task and summary of things that need to happen. And then when these get done, it actually returns back to the orchestrator. And I've had it a few times say something like, oh, I didn't like that change, or that isn't quite what we wanted. Let's do another change. So sometimes because of the result of the job, it actually will kick off another job. Really what I'm seeing is there's two big pros of this approach. One, we can control in more granular details the models that we use in the particular modes, which we already had that ability, but it now will auto switch from boomerang to code. And then we can have code assigned to a certain model. But not only that, is it allows us to control the context window a lot. Because I could particularly see a day where we actually have modes that are specific to a certain type of job. So the big thing that this mode introduces is the idea of using the new tasks tool. And this is what makes this entire thing possible and has me thinking about other ways that we can actually utilize the new tasks tool. Boomerang mode itself doesn't have the ability to read files or edit code or do things like that. It's really just the orchestrator. And going back to my drawing here, when I'm dealing with AI agents, that is typically how I end up doing it. So this fits more with the pattern that I'm already using in a lot of my production code, where I'll have agents that will end up talking back and forth with the orchestrator, and the orchestrator decides where to send it. And this orchestrator, based on the job itself and the rules that it has around my particular agents, it may know, hey, we need to go do this particular thing, so we should call this agent to do it. It returns back a particular response. Based on that response, it'll decide what to do next. That is sort of where this is going. I see an inevitable future where we're going to see more and more agentic coding tools do something like this. Let me give you an example of this. So this is the prompt that I gave it. So you can see here, I did write a decent amount. I said I have 2 files I want you to work in. I need a mechanism that processes each chat message that comes in and decides how it should be displayed in the output. The chat will have tags in it like brief, email, ideas. Each of these blocks will need to be processed differently. You can start with the brief. The format of the message will probably be something like this. And then I give it an example. Now, what should happen is the following for brief. It should show a text box from the AI like it does now. But as soon as brief is detected, you should show a nicely styled box that can be clicked on that says generating brief. The chat artifact should immediately show the streaming in text of the brief. Once the brief text is done, the box should say and show generated brief and small text showing the subject line. Now, I don't have to read this entire thing for you, but I get down and I talk about showing custom components. I talk about the JSON format. I give it pretty good details on what's actually expected of this. And I will say it did a phenomenal job. So here's a couple tests. This isn't perfect yet. So basically, I told it to go with number 1. It generated my brief. You can see it loads in properly. I don't have my prompt that's actually generating this brief perfect yet, so just ignore that. The main thing was getting this functionality in there. And it did it perfectly. So now I actually have this artifact window off to the side, and it's got the box that I want. Of course, I'm going to style this differently. It broke up a single text message from the AI into 3 parts, just like I would want. This is funneled over properly, and we even have this being styled decently well there. It was actually very, very, very incredible. And let me just walk through kind of how this worked in RooCode. Now, looking at the flow it took, you can see it used 1.3 million tokens up, 14.7 down, with a context window of 71.3K. Now, I do think there's something off with the way Google counts tokens out, but I'm just going to leave that as it is because I've never seen so many tokens going out as I've seen with Google. When I put that in, it ends up generating a workflow plan. So it wants to create a message parsing service, perfect. It wants to integrate it into the chat page, perfectly. Create custom brief component, great, and then update chat artifact component. And then when it wants to create a new task, this is what it sends it. It sends it requirements, and this isn't formatted great, but it tells you pretty much everything that this thing is required to do. And it also specifically says, do not modify any existing component. So it's like trying to control it to do just this one particular thing. This kicks off, if I go to my history here, and you can see all the different like subtasks I've done. This is the task that actually got fired off here. It used a 22.2K context window. It created the message parser service, and it completed that and then returned back to the main task to continue on. And you can see that just continues on and on and on. I had no errors with it. It never did anything that I didn't expect. As long as I gave it good information up front, I was very impressed with every one of the tasks. And to start with, I didn't put auto approve on for the subtasks. So I would read through and be like, yes, that's what I want. Go for it. And the results were great. Now, I tried this same thing without Boomerang mode, just using Claude 3.7, and it kept getting confused. It could not actually do what I was asking it to do. And ultimately, it would end up in this like infinite cycle of just generating errors in other places. You ever seen that thing where like you push a button, two more bugs pop up? That's really what it was doing, because it was trying to make all of these changes in a single context flow, and I just felt like it wasn't breaking up the problem right. So in this particular case, it worked significantly better. Now that may not always be the case. Some jobs may be better if you just use it in the traditional way. All right, so I've been working on this prompt just to test this out for sort of like one-shot coding. Now I'm using Google Gemini 2.5 Pro, so your model may vary, and I'm asking it to build a 3D tower defense game using Three.js. Now I give it a bit more detail here. I tell it about the game setup. I tell it about the enemies and how they're represented. I tell it about the towers and the different types of towers that I want, how they actually target, the controls. So I give it a bit of information on this. Now I'm going to kick this off and just kind of talk through what happens here, and I'll speed up the parts that end up taking a while. The first thing that I'm expecting here is for it to process this prompt and actually give me sort of a high level detail of the task it's going to do. I'm curious how many it's going to come up with here. Okay, so it ended up coming up with a plan. It looks like we've got 6, 7, 8 different subtasks it wants to do currently. Now here's how it looks. So I'm going to go ahead and prove this, because you can see here that it wants to actually set up the basic HTML structure in the initial Three.js scene. So we're going to kick that off and see we jumped into a brand new context window, and it is creating the HTML. All right, so it's pretty well in. So far it's generated index.html and main.js. So here it's wanting me to open index.html, but regardless, we're just going to go ahead and complete that and return. So now it wants to create a new subtask in code mode. So it's switching to code mode, which by the way, when I'm in code mode, I also have that set to Google as well for this particular one. Let's go ahead and approve that and see what it does. You can see here that I'm being rate limited for a few seconds. That's okay. I put that on there specifically because I don't want to get limited by Google. They've got a certain number of calls you can do per minute, and that just helps me kind of guarantee I'm not going to be throttled at all. I just throttle myself using RooCode's limits on it. So this one ended up finishing. It looks like it just updated main.js, so we're going to go ahead and complete that and return. Okay, now the next task that it wants to do is it wants to bring the enemies to life, creating the enemy objects, spawning them at the start path, making them move along the waypoints. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and approve that. It looks like it's going to put most of the code in main.js. I probably could have been more explicit about breaking that code up, but honestly, for this one, I think I'm fine with that. So it looks like we're doing a diff here. Okay, so that task finished. Let's go back and see what the next one is. All right, the next subtask is implementing the basic tower of blue cube. You know, we're looking at 19.2K, 20K context so far, and it's just adding it to main.js, which still isn't a bad size right now, 245. Go ahead and complete that and return. Okay, so now it says players can place tower. The next step is to make those basic towers actually do something. Find nearby enemies and shoot. All right, so let's go ahead and approve that. It went through and did quite a few different steps. 22.6K context window, implemented the firing logic into main.js. So now it's going to do another task where it makes the collision detection between projectiles and enemies apply damage, and the enemies will actually die when they reach 0 life. Isn't this absolutely cool, though, the way this works? And imagine turning that on auto when you're doing something. Kick off a giant task of something and just let it orchestrate the entire thing. Go make dinner, come back and see what ended up happening. That's so cool. I'm really, really impressed with this. The RooCode team keeps just putting out bangers after bangers, and this is something I didn't expect. All right, so now we should have our projectile enemy collision. Go ahead and complete that and see what the next one is. All right, so the next task it wants to do is it wants to add the sniper and AoE towers that I defined. And let's see what happens there. I'm curious how it's going to do the like UI of this, or how I pick which tower I want to place. Right now I've actually got it loaded up over here on the side, and you can kind of see here that I could just kind of click to place towers. And while it's changing this, I've just been seeing if it loads up. It's kind of neat though. All right, so that ended up finishing. I'm wondering how the cycling of the tower types can work. So you can now cycle through basic blue cube, sniper, cyan, and AoE tower types using the T key. Let's go ahead and refresh it. So now the sniper is actually shooting stuff, and the cone has like this area effect, I believe. What if I can actually kill stuff? Yeah, it's actually killing things. And then this one, I'm not sure. I don't. Oh, the blue one's shooting now. This is actually pretty sick, to be honest with you. All right, so now what it wants to do is give the sniper and AoE towers their distinct firing behaviors, which is interesting because they're already kind of firing. But to be fair, I think it's using the same firing behaviors. So see there, like shooting about the same as the blue one here. I might have put too many towers in there. Yeah, I do think the sniper has a longer range, so that's already taken into account. And I bet you the AoE's got a closer range. If I put it here, for example, I bet it'll start hitting. Yep. Okay, so that ended up finishing. It apparently has implemented the unique firing mechanics. We're going to go ahead and complete that. And I'm going to try to do a hard refresh to make sure I've refreshed the serving of those files here. Okay, so what it wants to do now is do a player health system and add a user interface. That's super cool. I was wondering if what it was going to do for a UI. All right, it says it has implemented the requested changes. Should have player health and stuff now. Let's take a look what the next task will be. That might be the last one. And yep, it says task completed. So cool. We should have a fully functioning version of the game now. All right, so here is our functioning game. Let's see if the basic tower works. Yep, we've got some damage there. Now we've selected sniper. I think the sniper just has a longer range if I told it correctly. And then I'm going to switch the AoE. Theoretically, it's technically doing an AoE effect. I guess I don't know a way to tell that exactly. I wish I had health bars on there. The other thing that it's done is it's put health up here. This is actually really good. I'm very, very impressed with how well this turned out. Now, just for demo purposes, I'm going to go ahead and do that same prompt using the Google Gemini 2.5 Pro, and I'm going to use it in code mode, and then I'm going to report back on basically how Roo and Google actually accomplished this without the boomerang task, just so we can see the side-by-side comparison here. And maybe while that's running, what I'll do is I'll play some of this, because this is pretty sweet. I could see iterating on this quite a bit, adding different paths, randomizing that a bit. All right, so I'm pretty far into the other test without boomerang task, and I'm already starting to hit some of the diff errors. And it makes me wonder why this occurs when I'm not using boomerang tasks. So I'm very confused on that. Is it because of the context limit? Here I'm getting a 76% similarity when it really needs 100 there. And it's only doing a few lines. So I'm very interested in that. Curious if it's going to happen anymore. But anyway, this is where I'm at currently. Actually, it did happen again. So this one finished. I'm running it on HTTP server just to see how this ends up working. And let's see what we got here. All right, so I'm going to change the link to 3module.js. Sometimes they just don't have the most up-to-date version, so I'll be right back. Okay, so I updated that. It does have the same like switching stuff, so that's pretty cool. All right, so I did actually go through and try to change a bunch of things. Still not getting any errors in the console anymore. Let me check the version of 3JS just to make sure it's using a more recent one. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to give up on this one. I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping I could see what it generated there. But hopefully this gave you an idea of how boomerang tasks work, the quality of the output that you get, some of the good things about it. Yeah, I'm disappointed I couldn't get the one-shot one to do without boomerang tasks. But I think that just goes to show you how well boomerang tasks actually works just out of the box. So to give you a perspective, I've worked on 4 different tasks, 4 different features. The one that I showed you earlier on was phenomenal. I did another one that also was phenomenal, and that one was a little bit more complicated because it had writing an API and then hooking it up to the front end. I don't know, it's probably similar complexity. And then ultimately I had one that did a bug fix, so it literally did like 2 subtasks. I probably could have done that one without it. And then another one that I did was also a front end one, and all 4 worked great. I've even iterated using Boomerang Tasks. So even after it finished, I would generate a list of 3 additional things I want to do and kick it off, and it would go. I've been very, very happy with it. And I've been very happy with the Gemini 2.5 Pro model, in particular in the Boomerang task, like subtasks, because I haven't hit any diff issues in 4 or 5 hours of using this today. Now, I didn't test this to the point where I would say I'm going to use this from now on, but I do think it's important for everyone to actually know about this feature and to try it out. So I'll have a link in the description below to tell you how to set it up. You should for sure do that. Try it with the Google Gemini 2.5 Pro model. Also try it with Claude as well. And I would love to hear your thoughts on how it's working for you. If you have mixed results, let me know, like what it works good for, what it doesn't work good for. There may be setups that other people are using today that are just better than the way Boomerang Tasks does it. I'm just really curious to hear. Regardless, I think this is a big upgrade, and I think it's worth stating that I predict this is the future of how these agentic coding tools are going to work. Because especially as the cost of these is going to go up, limiting our context is going to be the key driver to keep the cost down. And one of the best ways to do that is to break up the work into these small pockets of context that basically minimize the number of tokens up and down. And with Google's case, for example, a lot of that isn't context window size. It's a lot of the tokens that are being sent up. And we all know that Cursor recently announced that the pricing is similar for Gemini 2.5 Pro to the other frontier models, the other models like Claude and OpenAI. So we're expecting a range in, around the Claude pricing, or maybe it's going to be somewhere between O3 Mini and Claude, somewhere in that price range. I'm excited about this change. I'm going to be using this all day tomorrow. Man, the RooCode team is just cooking. Like they have been crushing it lately. So if you have not checked out RooCode, you definitely should do it. Join their Discord, join my Discord, join a community of people that are on the forefront of talking about AI and technology. And if you made it this far and this was helpful for you in any way, please give me a like and let me know in the comments below. Until next time, everyone. Peace out.